Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Now, the Week 7 AP Top 25 poll in college basketball is out, and I'm going to go through the rankings 1 through 25 and see what I think about them. Purdue is the number one team in college basketball. They were number one last week, and they're staying at number one after beating Davidson this past week. And Purdue has been really solid this season. They've had a couple of close calls, but since they're the number one team, they definitely don't deserve to move down for winning. And Uconn is at number two, and you can make an argument for Uconn to be the number one team. They beat Butler this past week, and Uconn has been dominating every team that they have played. They have been much more dominant than Purdue, but since Purdue is the number one team, Uconn hasn't bounced them yet. But if Uconn keeps winning, they will definitely become the number one team, or if Purdue loses. Houston is at number three, and they beat Virginia and North Carolina A&T. And Houston was the number one team, but they dropped down to number five. But since they got a really good one over Virginia, they moved back up to number three. Kansas is number four, and they beat Indiana this past week, and Kansas is playing really good right now. They only have one loss, and Kansas moves up from number 8 to number 4 for that reason, and plus other teams lost as well. Arizona's at number 5, and they beat Texas Corpus Christi, and they beat Tennessee. Arizona's playing really good basketball. Like Kansas, they only have one loss, but Arizona and Kansas are definitely looking like top 5 teams right now, and they definitely deserve to be in the top 5. Virginia's at number 6, and they lost to Houston. They dropped from number 2 to number 6 for that loss. Very tough loss for Virginia. It's their first loss of the season, but Virginia's still a really talented team. Texas State's put at number 7. They beat Rice and Stanford this past week. They only have the one loss. They've been playing really well this season, but they have the problems going on with Chris Beard. But if Texas keeps playing well, they definitely will stay in the top 10. Tennessee's at number 8, and they lost to Arizona. And Tennessee's been playing fantastic basketball lately. That was a tough loss for Tennessee against Arizona, but they definitely still like a top 10 team. Alabama's at number 9, and they beat Memphis, and they lost to Gonzaga. That was a very tough loss against Gonzaga. Alabama's been playing really well lately, but their defense really struggled against Gonzaga. Both teams played really well on offense, but Alabama dropped 5 spots to number 9 for that loss. Arkansas is at number 10, and Arkansas, they only beat Bradley last week, so they stay put. Gonzaga's at number 11 after beating Northern Illinois and Alabama, and Gonzaga almost cracks the top 10 again. But since Arkansas only has one loss and Gonzaga has 3, Gonzaga stays outside the top 10 for now. Baylor's at number 12, and they beat Washington State this past week. Baylor's been playing well this season. They only have 2 losses, but they dropped a spot because of Gonzaga's win. But Baylor definitely can move back into the top 10 if they keep winning. UCLA's at number 13. They beat Maryland and they beat Kentucky. Those were really good wins this past week for UCLA, and they move up 3 spots for their performance. Duke is at number 14. They did not play a game this past week, and they dropped 2 spots only because other teams played really well and passed them. Mississippi State's at number 15. They beat Jackson State and Nicholls State. They move up 2 spots because other teams lost. Mississippi State's still undefeated. They don't really have a signature win, but since they are undefeated, they deserve to be ranked. But once they start playing better competition, we will definitely know how good Mississippi State is. Illinois is at number 16, and they beat Alabama A&M last week. They have 3 losses, but they have played a pretty tough schedule so far, and Illinois is like a pretty solid team. Wisconsin's at number 17. They beat Lehigh last week, and Wisconsin only has 2 losses, and they move up 5 spots because a lot of other teams lost. And Wisconsin's been pretty solid so far. Indiana's at number 18. They now have 3 losses. They lost to Kansas this past week. That was a very tough loss. They weren't too competitive in that game. They only dropped 4 spots because a lot of other teams lost as well. But Indiana's going to have to start winning again if they want to stay in the top 25. Kentucky's at number 19. Same thing as Indiana. They have 3 losses. They dropped 6 spots for losing to UCLA, and they're going to have to start playing better as well if they want to stay in the top 25 because they're really struggling on offense right now. TCU's at number 20, and they beat Mississippi Valley State this past week. They move up 1 spot because other teams lost. They only have 1 loss, but TCU has not really played and beaten too many great teams so far, and they do have that bad loss to Northwestern State. But TCU can definitely move up if they start winning some big games in the Big 12. Virginia Tech's at number 21, and they beat Grambling State this past week. They only have 1 loss. Virginia Tech's going to have to do some more in the ACC if they're going to move up a lot in the top 25. But they have played well to start this season. They've looked like a top 25 team. Miami's at number 22, and they only have 1 loss as well. Both Virginia Tech and Miami have moved up because they've benefited from other teams losing. And Miami beat St. Francis this past week. But again, once Miami enters ACC play and starts playing better competition, we'll know how good Miami is on whether they're a top 25 team or not, just like Virginia Tech. Auburn's at number 23. They dropped 4 spots. They now have 2 losses after losing to USC. They did beat Georgia State this past week as well. Auburn's really struggling right now, even though they're still in the top 25. Their 2 losses against USC and Memphis, they did not look like a top 25 team. They're really struggling right now, but if Auburn can turn it around and start playing better in the SEC, they will stay in the top 25. Marquette's at number 24. They beat Creighton this past week, and even though Creighton's really struggling right right now. That was still a really good win for Marquette. Marquette's been playing really solid this season. They have 3 losses, but they have lost to really solid teams, and they do have a fantastic win over Baylor as well. Arizona State's at number 25, and like Marquette, both teams have entered the top 25. Arizona State, they beat Creighton as well and San Diego. That was a really good win over Creighton, even though Creighton's struggling a bit. But Arizona State, they've been playing really solid, and if they keep winning, especially once Pac-12 play starts, they will definitely stay in the top 25. And Maryland and Ohio State out of the Big Ten, they dropped from the top 25 because they lost this past week. Very tough losses for both teams. And the other team votes: Maryland, West Virginia, Xavier, Charleston, New Mexico, Memphis, North Carolina, Ohio State, Iowa, San Diego State, Texas Tech, Utah State, Michigan State, USC, Kansas State, and St. Mary's. All these teams are in the other receiving votes and can definitely move back into the top 25 if they start to play better and get some good wins. So non-conference play is almost over for all these teams, and the teams that deserve to be in the top 25 and the teams that don't deserve to be in the top 25 is starting to shake itself out. We're starting to be able to tell which teams are actually good and which teams are not. Once conference play starts, we're really going to get even a better notion on whether teams are good or not. Comment down below what you think about the AP Top 25 rankings and whether the AP Top 25 voters rank the teams fairly. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below, and I will see you next time.